Good morning, billionaires. Why? Why do I like to get myself in trouble? I don't get it. I really didn't need an extra 1,200 pages on my TBR for January. But I guess, this is the problem with BookTube. As it's been already asserted a few times in this channel, BookTube is kind of on the way of my reading. I enjoy more reading, but I read less, and that is partially because like I completely lose the structure of reading. I get bombarded by new book projects and books ideas that kind of like get on the way of my kind of semi already kind of not negligent, but definitely not perfected structure. And I am, as at some point in the beginning of this book, Tolstoi says, hard work can only be achieved through order. I don't know which is the character that says that, but I know it's in the first few pages because I underlined it. And I actually agree with that a lot. I think that my lack of order, my generalized chaos in my life has always been kind of on the way of my actual great capacity to do hard work. I have a lot of will. I'm gonna get through this. As I'm doing many other readings on the side, and I still wanna do it in less than a month. Hopefully, I'm always like sometimes I say that I'm gonna do something in here in a bit less time than I think it is, hoping that somehow there's gonna be some looming sense of accountability in the background that's gonna make me push it a little bit more than I could, so that I can be free by February. Because in February I was planning to read Dahlgren with David Wiley. So yeah, I mean, this is just the first impressions. I don't know how many books, how many videos like this I'm gonna do. I'm reading this with a bunch of other people. As I said, I did not plan to read it, but suddenly everyone I knew, like I mean, inside and outside of BookTube, in the English BookTube community and in the Spanish BookTube community, or not necessarily BookTube community, but kind of like landscape, are reading this book in January or in sooner or later, but a bunch of people is. So I'm like, okay, I want in. Of course I want in. And I joined this Boxer group chat with a bunch of other booktubers, which might write down their... I'll maybe link their channels on the description. I don't know that any of them has made a video already, and it's a wise decision because at least on my case, I'm pretty lost. There's many characters. Surprisingly, it's harder for me to read this kind of book than to read some dry non-fiction book about, neuroscience. And that's because, I don't know, there's to get immersed in the story, I have to absorb all the names, feel myself in the environment, the setting with which the novel starts. And Tolstoy likes to start with balls, with dinner parties, with a bunch of people, and speaking sort of like with high society mannerisms and conventions that, as much as I can like them, written by a hand like Tolstoy's, it kind of tires me after 100 pages, and that's what happened in the first part. The first part was a bit hard to read. I am right now at the beginning of the second part, and it looks like now the war part of the book is starting to appear. Because before that, it was, I think, 3 dinner parties in the first part that were just sort of like preparing the characters, showing us the relations between them, also their desires. 2 characters that for me were sort of like more destacable was Pierre, which is a young, a bit naive character that admires Napoleon and yet is going to war against him. It's suggested that both in Pierre's case as well as in the other character that I find quite interesting, which is a completely different kind of character, is kind of like a role model to Pierre, and also seems to be much more strict in his environment, in his social environment and everything, is Prince Andrei. And both of them seem to kind of like admire Napoleon and at the same time want to fight against him, perhaps to get sort of like the glory that they envy from him. I don't know. I don't know much about this historical period. I only know a few things about Napoleon, and I'm perhaps making this video out of interest as well, because I asked already in the Boxer group chat. I don't think anyone has answered me yet, although by the time this video is posted probably someone will have. But I'm also interested in knowing if anyone knows can recommend me a book, maybe a long essay about this book, that is not so much about the plot, but about the historical period, or a history book that tackles the context of War and Peace. Because although I don't think it's necessary to read, to do any second reading for this, I am curious, and when they are talking about war, and like and now in the beginning of the second part, sort of like the French having already won against the Austrians and approaching, and all these kind of details. I'd like to know exactly what was going on, what triggered the war, and rather than sort of like the context being slowly presented to me through Tolstoi. I know that Tolstoy believed this was a history book. I think he did, but I'm pretty sure it's not. This is a novel. So I would like maybe something more neutral and more wide-ranging, focused only on contextualizing War and Peace. So if anyone knows a book like that or an essay, that'd be amazing to read. And yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to say. I am only presenting this here so that you know that a bunch of booktubers are reading this book. So it might be a good time to pick it up and read it again, and read it yourself. Read it if you haven't read it, and read it again if you have read it. I'm definitely going to make at least a few more videos, meaning more than one. Definitely one more for sure, once I finish the book, but perhaps I'll make a video in every part of this book. It's not a read-along per se, but you are welcome to read along. Also, if you wanted to join the Boxer groups, that I believe they're pretty welcoming, and yeah, I think that's all I had to say. I'll add that it's been very helpful to have this with me, the Kindle, because until now I was only able to read this in bed. I spend the whole day outside, so I only come home to sleep, meaning I was only able to read the first part while I was either waking up or going to sleep, which is not ideal, and it's not enough if you want to get rid of this book as relatively fast. Not reading in a bad sense, but reading in the sense of like, I have many other readings I have to get to that I had planned. This is not the case. And, this, I have strong hands, I have strong forearms and fingers, I'm a climber, but holding this it really gets on your way, not to talk about putting it in a backpack that already has other books and a computer and a container with food for the day. So yeah, I'm not... I am reading here, but I am supplementing with this wonderful Kindle that is even more wonderful now that Steve has sent me over 200 books for free. So now I have more books here than I have in this room at the moment. So yeah, that's all. Let me know if you have read War and Peace. I mean, I don't mind the spoilers, but try not to spoil me, because I'm assuming that this being a war book, partially at least, there's gonna be deaths. There's gonna be more specific and relevant to the narrative kind of plot twists. So I'd like to safeguard as much as possible my first reading experience. It's not a big deal if you have to spoil me. I am not a big believer in spoilers as a generalized taboo in society, but I do have a preference in this case. So, but still, tell me what you think about it. Tell me if you want to join and all of that. This is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. I'll get back to you with much more interesting and nuanced stuff once I have actually found myself truly immersed in the story, which I am only starting to be now that I'm starting the second part. Yeah, I'll see you on the other side. Thank you, Octave.